cloud is also an architecture. And so cloud can be on-premise, it can be in a hyperscaler, it can be at the edge. So I think cloud repatriation doesn't mean we move away from being cloud first. We're becoming cloud smart.
But definitely when it comes to repatriation, it's definitely intentional. It is a data-driven business decision, not really ideological or emotional one. It cannot be just open the tap and the application starts flowing in. Let me be very, very clear about it, right? So that's the aspiration that I love to have. I haven't seen it yet.
Imagine this. It's a normal work day. You log into a corporate network, expecting the emails to work, your collaboration tools to work, and the systems to respond in real time. Except nothing works. Your inbox won't load, and your access to critical systems also is not there. You think that it's an outage, but actually it's not an outage. The infrastructure is fine, the bills are paid. So what has really happened and seems hypothetical is actually a real story which happened with an Indian company in the middle of 2025. And the problem did not start in India. It started 1,000 miles away, somewhere in Europe. Due to geopolitical issues, the European Union decided to put sanctions on companies or Russian-linked entities. And this company in India had a stakeholder who had a significant investment in this company. And this company's entire digital backbone was on a hyperscaler, which decided to abruptly stop the services. So this company basically had to go for legal recourse. And in 2 days' time, the systems and all were restored. But this story basically left a mark and a lot of questions started cropping up. This incident exposed something which many companies in their cloud-first movement had not considered. That what does resilience really mean for cloud-first? It's not only uptime. It is actually about sovereignty. Who controls your data? Who governs your access? And can any global policy change impact your operations? Because of all these aspects, slowly a movement is emerging, quite and powerful. That is cloud repatriation. And today, as part of this episode, we'll go a little deeper in terms of understanding how organizations are evaluating their cloud strategies, not only from a perspective of outages, but also from a perspective of such global changes. And to go deeper into this conversation, we have with us two experts from Hewlett Packard Enterprise and Intel, two companies which are on the forefront of innovation for on-prem as well as hybrid IT environment. So let's get started. So thank you, Sumner and Shrikant, for joining for this conversation today. Let's start with some quick introductions. So maybe Sumner, you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Sumner Lemon. I'm based here in Singapore, work for Intel. I've been with Intel for a little over 15 years. And currently I look after our data center and AI business. So working very closely, of course, with companies like HPE, but also the wider ecosystem, end users, partners like SIs and ISVs too.
Great. Shrikant.
I'm Shrikant Seshadri. I've been with HP for the last 17 years. Glad to be here. I'm responsible for three functions within HPE. One is leading the advisory, leading a very intelligent group of enterprise architects in APAC. And I'm also serve as a chief architect for APAC, which is a sort of a chief technology officer role within the APAC geo. So I work very closely with customers and partners, primarily on positioning the hybrid cloud, helping customers to optimize their private clouds, and which is going to play a very, very important part in this challenging times. And it's all about how we bring the cloud experience to where the applications and data live. That's been the message that I've been consistently bringing to our customers and partners.
So to kickstart the conversation, so we hear this term cloud repatriation a lot. So for IT leaders and business leaders, from your perspective, how should they really think about it?
I think with cloud repatriation, I think the basic foundation is not to think of any state or infrastructure as being permanent in IT. We know that IT is a very fast moving space. There's a ton of innovation that reshapes the applications and the infrastructure and the way that we use it inside of organizations. That's been happening recently, probably more than it has in a while. But cloud repatriation, in my mind, is a normal state. It's the continual optimization of workloads and the infrastructure where they run best for any specific customer. And the answer is going to be different too. So every company or end user will find a different balance that works for them.
Absolutely, Sumnar. So, cloud repatriation essentially is a deliberate act by an enterprise to bring the workloads back from the hyperscalers to the on-premise environment. When I say an on-premise environment, it can be a customer's own data center, or it could be an edge location, or it could be a co-location facility, right? And obviously, it's not that the cloud or the public cloud has failed. It's not about that. It's about the economics. It's about the performance. It's about the sovereignty. It's all about the control. These are the key factors that we see playing a very, very important part in terms of making the right decisions to move the applications and workloads from hyperscalers to the on-premise. And it's sometimes it is by accident people move their applications to the hybrid cloud. But definitely when it comes to repatriation, it's definitely intentional. It is a data-driven business decision, not really ideological or emotional one.
Got it. So now, since that we have set the context of and basically defined amongst us what is cloud repatriation, the question is: this was a cloud first was a decision taken by the CIOs and the IT leaders a few years back. Now, what is the need to revisit that decision? So, in any perspective you have?
Yeah, I think so. I think when we talk about cloud, I think there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. One is this, the hyperscaler cloud service provider. That's an important part of it. But cloud is also an architecture, and so cloud can be on premise, it can be in a hyperscaler, it can be at the edge. So I think cloud repatriation doesn't mean we move away from being cloud first. We're becoming cloud smart. We're thinking about where in the cloud the workload should live. What are the economic drivers, the compliance drivers, the cost drivers, determine that placement. So yeah, I think that's a key thing to keep in mind.
I think one of the other things is actually is about the economic factor, right? So what we are clearly seeing that is when the justification was built for cloud, the economics was very much in favorable for moving that particular application to a hyperscaler public cloud environment, right? And secondly, things have changed over a period of time, right? So then we need to really look into whether that economics still makes sense, right? And apart from that, the world has also changed in terms of risk compliance, sovereignty. A lot of new laws, legislations getting framed to protect the data. So all these factors are something that needs to be taken into consideration in terms of making the call whether the application and data should stay in the hybrid cloud or should stay in the public cloud or should come back to an on-premise environment. So and we've seen that, and it also varies by industry, right? I cannot just generalize for every industry, right? So say for example for financial services, yes, the compliance becomes very, very critical. The government is very much focused on sovereignty. We clearly, with plenty of geopolitical situations developing, and its sovereignty becomes top of the agenda for the public sector. And same goes for healthcare, where security is very, very critical, right? So again, we need to be we see that the trends changes by industry.
Yeah, and if I could just add something to that, I think if we look back a few years and we think about, when did cloud really become mainstream for most companies? That was for a lot of companies, that was during COVID. Prior to COVID, there had been this debate about do we move to cloud or not? And then there were constraints during the COVID period, lockdowns. You couldn't get servers shipped into countries. You couldn't get them installed into data centers. And so cloud was a way of solving that business problem at that point in time. And what we've seen in the intervening years is we've seen, that rebalancing as companies think about, okay, that makes sense, or this doesn't make sense. I want to pull that back onto prem. At the same time, what we've seen is, in the beginning, it was on-prem meant an upfront capital investment. And cloud was OpEx. And so that enabled a bit more flexibility in your budget. That's gone away now. I mean, with GreenLake, for instance, companies can do an OpEx model on premise. You don't need to be in a hyperscaler. So, this kind of evolution of cloud computing and what it means and what the hybrid environment looks like, I think is facilitating a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very interesting that you mentioned COVID because one of the benefits of GreenLake during COVID, especially for customers who were already on GreenLake, was that they had 20 to 30% extra capacity on-prem in the data centers, whoever was a GreenLake customer. So that was one of the benefits. But so very interesting perspective. Now, coming back to the cloud repatriation part, in fact, one point, Shrikant, which you mentioned was that it's not an emotional decision. So now when people are revisiting that, so is it more about disappointment or is it about right sizing and right strategy?
That's more than the emotional aspects of things, right? So in fact, before I come back to that point, Nusrat, let me talk about some emotional parts that made the decision. In fact, I remember talking to a few CIOs before COVID. Some not talk about the COVID era. I'm talking about a couple of years before COVID, right? One of the CIOs clearly told me, Shrikant, your GreenLake positioning is fantastic. HP's hybrid cloud, hybrid IT messaging, hybrid cloud messaging is great, but I've got a pressure coming from the board. If I don't move my applications to a cloud, a public cloud, which that's what he's referring to, so I may lose my job.
Oh.
So that's the sort of emotions and that's the sort of things that happen at that point in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to this to this point on looking at the emotional versus the rational decisions, right? The very critical thing is you got to be data driven. So what sort of data actually drives this sort of decisions to place your applications and data, whether it's in the on-premise or in the public cloud, is we start with from the business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the business allow? Where does the business, what does the business need? Some functions require systems that needs to be closer to where the action happens, right? Some systems are required to be deployed where exactly the data is getting generated, stored, and processed. So business drives the business is the fundamental factor we need to look at, and then there are certain data points related to business needs to be taken into consideration. Second is the functional part.
Mm-hmm.
So functional part in terms of how is this application architected in the first place? What's the sort of agility? Just I'm taking agility as an example here. What's the sort of agility that is required here, right? So again, going back to the, we love to talk about the time periods, right? COVID era, pre-COVID era. I mean, the whole public cloud really started off is because of the internet.com era.
Yeah.
Because you needed infinite capacity and infinite scalability,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the functional part. Then the technical part in terms of the SLAs and all those things that's required, what's the available uptime that needs to be required. And the other important aspect is the vendor lock-in. So that's the technical part. So business, functional, technical. Then lastly is the financial or the economics part in terms of what's exactly you're paying to the provider and what's the overall TCO that over a period of time, what exactly you're getting out of that. So does it make sense? So these are some of the data points that one has to take into consideration in terms of making a right judgment in terms of where the application needs to land, whether it's on-premise or whether it's in public cloud. If it's in the public cloud, these data points needs to be applied to those applications and workload to make a call whether it can continue where it stays or it needs to be moved back to the location where it makes more sense.
Yeah, I think great pointers on some of the factors to consider. Now, if we take the conversation forward for the audience who are listening, they must be thinking that, okay, if they have to consider these insights and input, then what workloads to start with evaluating? So any perspective you have in terms of which workloads first to take, or any views on that?
Okay, a lot of accidents happened in the past, Nusrat. Let's be honest, because of that emotional, I'm continuing that emotional thread here. Because of the emotional decisions, what happened is they just moved the applications and data, whether it makes sense or not, right? So the first thing that you need to really look at is core applications. When I say core applications, it could be a SAP or ERP type of an application for a manufacturing company. In fact, I was surprised that one telecom company was saying that the billing system runs on hyperscalers, which I was a bit shocked to initially believe it. So billing systems are very critical, right? So ERP for manufacturing, billing for telco, core banking systems. So those are core applications that needs to be really to be considered, right? Then there are some heavy-duty databases which might have ended up there that may not be suitable there. So if it's processing a significant amount of data and huge amount of capacity, then definitely it's bleeding there, and the public cloud needs to be brought back, right? And then where you need to have inferencing at the edge, because edge is where 70% of the data for any organization is located. Edge can be hospital, it can be airport, can be manufacturing shop floor, a retail supermarket. So definitely, if we are looking at AI inferencing at the edge, so definitely that has to be running on the edge, not on the hyperscaler. So these are some of the things that we need to take into consideration. But broadly, Nusrat, just to summarize, any workload that is not really bursty, which means if it's going to be consuming fixed amount of capacity, if its behavior is very, very consistent and very disciplined workloads, better off to run it on-premise.
Yeah.
But if it's really a bursty workload where you can't predict the scalability and elasticity, elasticity is the word that came from hyperscalers, then it's better off to run in the public cloud.
So you mentioned an angle of the stable workloads and the elastic workloads, that differentiation. But some of our listeners who must be listening, if they are thinking from a point of view of, say, experimental workloads or mission critical workloads, so within these two, what will be your recommendation?
Oh, definitely mission critical workloads. You got to put it on the private cloud, on premise, definitely, because that's what I call the core applications, right?
It may depend though. I think with those large applications that are very predictive and very stable, say ERP, for instance, I would agree. But I think we have to recognize that public cloud does have some real advantages, and there can be mission critical applications. Say if you're in an e-commerce store or mobile gaming, the cloud would still be essential for that. I think another thing to think about is those applications that are very difficult to refactor for the cloud, right? Like the very old legacy monolithic type of applications. And then Shrikant, I think you made an excellent observation about the way that workloads are changing and the importance of inference going forward. And what I've observed with a couple of customers is they're using hyperscalers to iterate and test and do POCs using GPUs or large frontier models, but then they're moving those POCs on premise for production deployment. And that largely is because of data gravity and latency requirements in performance. So, it's interesting watching how companies are kind of calibrating and fine tuning over time.
Yeah. So since you talked about companies recalibrating their workload and making an assessment of what should come back, the key factor will be the risk assessment, because if you're seeing a lot of data and the operating model has moved to the cloud-like model, what are the risks of bringing it back on-prem if they have to?
So I think the risks can be significant, and they can be very fundamental. If you've been operating in the cloud, do you have the capacity planning skill set? Do you have the data centers? Do you have the ability to install servers and bring them up? I mean, some of these fundamental kind of capabilities, we may have let go of as we kind of move to the cloud. So how do you bring them back? Also, migration is always a risk. Oh, yeah. When you're moving an application from the cloud, back on-prem, you don't want to have any impact to the business. So, I think those are critical to think of. And then, there have been surprises with cloud costs, and I think you mentioned, kind of like the emotion, the bill shock, the invoice shock is real. Yeah. But if you have a critical application and you're moving it back on-prem and you under forecast the capacity you need, that can have damaging implications to the business. And so I think it's important to kind of assess the business need, do the workload evaluation, understand what workload should be where, and then step back and think about, okay, well, what are the resources and capabilities we need to facilitate that move?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on some very, very important points, Samna, right? So let me add a couple of more perspectives to Samna, right? One of the big challenges that I see is the skills gap. Let me give you an example. So if I am an AWS guy or a Azure guy or GCP guy, I've got used to the new way of how we build applications on cloud, infrastructure as a code, with significant amount of automation, self-service capability. All those things are by default available on all of the cloud platforms. So once the application or workload moves back to the on-premise, do we get that same experience? Is another thing. And you may get the same experience, but the skills to essentially make use of that experience is different from what we see in the hyperscalers. Right? So that's something that we need to take into consideration. The other perceived risk, this is a perceived risk, is the loss of agility. That is infinite capacity, infinite elasticity. That's what hyperscalers promise to the enterprises. So, but when it comes to an on-premise type of an environment, a private cloud type of environment, there is a perception that the agility and elasticity gets compromised or minimized. So that's something that we need to take into consideration. The other thing is the security posture, right? So that will change from a hyperscaler to from an on-premise perspective. But the most important thing here is, so what we've been talking, Mr. Diffie, we sort of realize we are calling out all cloud experiences.
Yeah.
That's what exactly your automation, your security posture, and all these things. If we can deliver those cloud experiences on premise, so definitely the gap between a private cloud and a public cloud is never that doesn't become a point of comparison anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what exactly HP's GreenLake is designed to deliver.
Yeah, actually, if I could just kind of pick on a couple of points that you mentioned that I think are really good. You earlier talked about vendor lock-in and wanting to avoid that as being one reason why you would want to be on-prem. I think that's really true. I mean, it's you don't want to be locked into a particular software platform, a SaaS platform that you can't move to another provider or back on-prem. Hybrid cloud, multi-cloud gives you that negotiating ability across different suppliers. But a key risk is, how are you going to manage all of this, right? If you're a large enterprise and you've got on-prem infrastructure and you have workloads running in multiple hyperscalers and maybe neoclouds, you have to be able to manage that through a single pane of glass.
Yeah.
And I think that's where hybrid IT and kind of some of the capabilities that HPE offers really kind of help companies navigate that challenge and manage that complex enterprise environment.
Great. I think you brought in perspective about the multi-cloud, and you spoke about skills, the perception of agility, and security. Now, if we look at these four aspects, if somebody is really planning to repatriate, then this involves a lot of planning, correct? So what's your proposal for that?
Yeah, it cannot be just open the tap and application starts flowing in. Let me be very, very clear about it, right? So that's the aspiration I love to have. I haven't seen it yet, but I love to have that, right? So there's a tap that I open, the application moves here. The other lever I flick this side, it goes that side. We'll get there at some point in time, hopefully, right? But the most important thing is it needs to be planned. It needs to be planned, and it has to be a phased and staged approach that's going to make a huge difference, right? It all starts with he talked about the profiling of applications. You really need to profile the applications to see how does it exactly behave, how exactly it's being used, or who are all the personas using it. So you have to go through that business, functional, technical, financial assessment of those applications. That's where it starts. So once you do that in HP's language, we call this as a right mix. You start defining the right mix. So from that behavior of the applications, you say these applications are best to leave it there in hyperscalers, or best to leave it there in the private cloud. But we can tweak it a little bit to deliver better cloud experiences, but leave it there as it is. Then you start looking at those applications, which clearly is not a fit wherever they are staying today, to see what could be the best destination it needs to get to, whether it has to be moved from a public cloud to a private cloud, or private cloud to a public cloud, or private cloud on the core data center to a cloud at the edge. So we have to decide that. So, and then the next important thing is, he talked about the migration risk. Is as one of the biggest, as I totally agree, risk is a nightmare for the CIOs. That's what they say. Oh, I've been running this application on AWS for the last 12 years. Now you're asking me, it's a great proposition that you're bringing me to bring that application to a private cloud. I totally I'm with you on the benefits, but who's going to write the risk? Right. So then we need to look at the risk profile of the move. That is also needs to be taken into consideration. So it has to be phased. It has to be staged. You have to do the risk profiling. You have to look at the capacity usage profiling, the SLAs profiling. You have to really look at the skills gap that needs to be addressed. So all these needs to go into what we call as a cloud adoption program. You need to have a cloud adoption program, and that's where HP's advisory and professional services are very good in that. They have a very structured methodology. They've got a very good framework. They're a very good set of tools. So we have the right mix advisory as part of our GreenLake set of tools that's readily available. And then to make sure that you are absolutely on the dot on the financial benefits, you have some great tools like business advisory tool and all this available. We need to make use of those tools to really plan the whole journey. And if we can do that, that's almost 60% of the efforts.
Great.
And the rest 40% is execution.
I think Samner also touched about a single plane to manage. So basically, you are alluding to the hybrid cloud environment.
Yeah.
So if we look at, say, 5 years ahead, so what would a steady state look like in your view?
Well, that's I'm not sure anybody can predict what steady state will look in 5 years, particularly given everything that's happening right now. But I think you make a very interesting point. And, going back to some of the key things that Srikanth was calling out, and I think the framework that you articulated is spot on. That's exactly kind of the measured, data-driven approach that companies need to take. This is a very important time to be having those conversations for every company, because we all see what's happening right now with AI and the emergence of agentic applications and kind of agentic application architectures. The infrastructure that we have in place today at companies is not capable of supporting those workloads. It was not architected for those. It was not built for those. We don't have the memory. We don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the compute. We don't have the storage. All of that we need to start thinking through. And so, this is, a great time to kind of rethink about, well, what does my application infrastructure need to look like? And where is the public cloud going to play? Where is the kind of the private cloud going to play? And where is the edge cloud going to play? And how do I think about what that infrastructure looks like? The companies that aren't tackling that question right now, I think, are going to be in trouble in about 5 years, because I've seen data that shows that companies that are able to carve out 10 to 15% of their IT budgets to kind of tackle technical debt, to fund innovation projects, we're now seeing those companies growing faster with higher margins. And the new AI capabilities that are emerging are I think, are going to accelerate that trend significantly in the next few years.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the past, current, and the future. That's right. So in the past, the only strategy was cloud first, and that I debate what exactly is cloud means, right? Cloud first. Then, if you really look at it now, people have started to move from cloud first to hybrid first. And then what I clearly see that is from hybrid first, I slightly go a little bit more towards hybrid by design, right? It is going to be intentional. It is going to be fully optimized, and definitely sovereign is going to play a very, very important part in terms of how the cloud of the future, or the hybrid cloud of the future, is going to look like. Now, it's not that the hyperscalers is not an option anymore. Hyperscalers are going to be part of that whole hybrid cloud ecosystem that every enterprises are going to have it. And the most important thing, what we clearly see is the capability of the control plane. Let me use the term control plane here. That's what we've been referring to as an ecosystem of tools to manage the hybrid cloud environments. So that's going to evolve tremendously. And AI is going to play a very, very important part in terms of how the hybrid cloud is going to be managed and delivered. So the experience is going to be completely delivered by AI with AI Ops. These tools like OpsRamp, tools like Mist AI that we have within the HP networking portfolio. Then Morpheus, which has been our flagship cloud management platform, Zerto, our disaster recovery automation tool. And together with the other important thing is we always talk about build shock. So we need to have a better way to measure and report the spend, right? So the FinOps tools like Exhibity coming in, right? All of this, so this hybrid, the control plane for the hybrid cloud is going to play a very, very critical part in my view, and that's going to evolve with AI. And the automation from a rule-based automation, I'm borrowing the term from someone, agentic AI is going to play a very, very important part to not only to deliver the better business workflows for the business, but also to manage hybrid cloud. The agents are going to be used.
Yeah, I think the point you're making about sovereign is really critical. I think, as these applications become more important and more critical to companies, data becomes more valuable and becomes more important. So compliance is going to be more important than ever, and security. How do you maintain and protect that data? Because it's going to be increasingly, a valuable part of your competitive advantage as a company.
Great. So I think the way, Srikanth, you articulated, you talked about past, present, and future. So the way you explained, the future looks like it's not on-prem or public cloud. It's basically a coexistence and integration of both. That's what I am understanding.
Absolutely. You will have edge. You'll have co-location facilities. You'll have applications living on the core data centers, applications living on multi-hyperscaler environments. And let's not forget the neo clouds that are being built today, which is pretty much running the massive AI training workloads and all of that. That's going to be part of the ecosystem too. So clearly, I see this as a fully joined up hybrid IT environment.
Great. So for our audience and some of the leaders who may be listening to this conversation that we are having, and if they are considering cloud repatriation, what will be your advice to these senior leaders?
I think one is, I think this has to be a part of an ongoing process. I don't think it's something that you're just one and done. I think having that, regular kind of evaluation of your workloads, your applications, profiling them, thinking about, the business requirements, how the business requirements are evolving, and, what you need to do differently to meet them, whether that's 12 months out, 2 years out, or 5 years out. I think those conversations are more important now than ever. I think this needs to be a deliberate process, and the framework that Shrikant was articulating for how you manage that, that's a critical part of this step. And being very data driven and coming back to the beginning, not ideological about it. At the end of the day, it shouldn't matter. What matters is, are we supporting the business? Are we delivering the customer value? Are we able to respond and innovate fast enough in this environment? And that is really, I think, in my mind, the North Star. It's not about, where is the workload? We have a lot of tools and options that are at our disposal. Let's figure out what works best and march in that direction in a methodical, data-driven way.
Yeah. And definitely, my message is about we need to revisit the cloud first strategy, because most of the cloud strategy have been defined 5 to 10 years back. AWS was launched in the year 2007. It's almost 19 years now. That's the time I joined HP, by HP. So it's 19 years now. So definitely a lot of cloud strategies were defined in the 2010s. That's why enterprises started adopting clouds, right? So we need to revisit that strategy again, taking into consideration all the points that Samna talked about, right? We got to relook at the FinOps part, how to manage the financial aspects of cloud. We need to look at the sovereignty, right? And there's no one size fit for all. So which very clearly will point to a true hybrid cloud, hybrid IT type of an operating model for the future.
Great. So the final question now, if you have to give one key takeaway to our audience, what it would be?
I think the point that I would hope to leave the audience with is the importance of being cloud smart. We're at an inflection point in the industry. This is, on the level of, hyper-threading and what that enabled with virtualization. We're seeing a fundamental and transformational change in the way that enterprise infrastructure and applications are going to be deployed. As we navigate this, I think, understanding how we leverage clouds to our best business advantage is really important. My sense is that as data becomes more important, data gravity is on-prem, data gravity is at the edge. I think that's going to become more important. So kind of that COVID area, cloud first, kind of, hey, we've got to rush to the cloud. I think we probably see the pendulums swinging back a bit. But I think now is really the time to think about what's changing, how is it impacting our business, and how do we march forward?
Absolutely. So my takeaway that I would like to share with the team here is go and have a conversation on customers' cloud strategy. That's very critical. On all the points that Samna just mentioned, right? That's critical, because if you don't have the strategy, somebody else is doing that. We are missing out on the opportunity, right? Once you have this conversation, it's a great opportunity to reposition HPE, where our CEO talks about the building blocks of modern IT, which is networking, hybrid cloud, and AI. And AI is the biggest workload that is supported by cloud today. And networking provides the connected intelligence today. So it's all connected, right? Have that networking hybrid cloud AI conversations with the customers, and then help them to reframe their cloud first strategy to a hybrid by design strategy of the future.
Thank you, Samner and Shrikant, for an insightful and an engaging conversation. And to our audience, actually, cloud repatriation is not about moving backward. It's about moving smarter. Organizations are rethinking where their workloads truly belong, balancing performance, control, cost, and innovation. What stands out from this conversation is the power of choice. Whether it is leveraging the scalability of cloud, the control of private environments, or a hybrid cloud operating model, which basically uses the best of both the worlds. Modern IT is no longer one size fits all. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.